Welcome to this episode of Coffee Time Doodles. Pick up a hot drink, relax, and enjoy. In 1984, a year when mankind transcended to a biologically unexplainable level. In a year that changed the course of history of entertainment. A Russian created Tetris, a Canadian created Ghostbusters, and the same year, on the other side of the planet, a Japanese invented a story that would change the world. An engaging action story with the most charming and unique visual style that the world of comics had ever seen. A piece of work so masterfully crafted that it drove all of the Western eyes on the Japanese comics called manga. I mean, anime was technically introduced to America in the 1960s with Astro Boy and everything, but I'm talking about the manga that changed the world of every teenage kid in the early 90s. Yes, Dragon Ball by Akira Toriyama. And you know what else got created in 1984? Me. I was created in 1984 and it's not a coincidence. It makes me the best suited living person to talk about this. So let me tell you my personal story of how Dragon Ball came into my life and how it impacted it. Ooh, I'm excited! This is my first episode about manga and anime, and I make it about the most important one of my life. Perfect. So it was 1996. I was 12. I know, I'm old. I'm literally turning 70 in a month. So I was 12 and I was about to start high school. I was already a huge fan of animated cartoons and comics. I'm thankful that because I was living on the border of the French-Canadian region called Quebec and the English part of Canada, I had access to the best cartoon TV shows from both cultures. And I had a lot of TV shows from France. France and Japan actually made a lot of collaborations on animation shows. And they gave us a few masterpieces together that I wish all of you would know about, like Les Cités d'Or, aka The Mysterious Cities of Gold. One of my favorite memories that I need to tell you before I leave this tangent is that we had a few Japanese cartoons playing on TV for kids in the early 90s, such as Hutch the Honeybee or Demetan the Frog. They were so raw that the intro themes were the Japanese versions. These shows eventually got cancelled because they were deemed too brutal and sad. They would make the kids cry. Isn't that awesome? I remember them so strongly because the feelings were so intense and I really enjoyed that. I like this trait in anime in general. It's very expressive, just like old school Japanese theater. In Hutch, the little bee loses many of his friends throughout the series. Most of them die a cruel and sad death. Like the ant that dreamed to be able to fly and eventually had wings growing out of his body and started flying, just to get caught by a carnivorous plant and slowly get sucked in for 3 episodes straight, calling for help. Then another friend of Hutch tries to save the ant from the plant and also gets sucked in and dies. Whoa, is this like the children Game of Thrones? But you see how memorable that is? I was like 6 years old. The Japanese claimed that these shows were meant to prepare the kids for the difficulties of life and make them understand how to move past them. So yeah, I was already in love with anime before I knew much about it. And thanks to these hardcore kids shows, I was well trained for it, I guess. Look at me training before you kids were born. I'm a bigger anime fan than you are. So I was 12. Every morning with breakfast, I was reading the comic page in a daily newspaper that my parents were subscribed to. It was stuff like Peanuts and Garfield. And some morning, my mom showed me a page titled Manga, with a large print of Goku underneath. It was my first time seeing him. I remember this so well. I think I still have that newspaper print of Goku somewhere. I'll show it in some vlog another time with some of my oldest drawings. Suffice to say, I immediately fell in love with the art style. I was blown away. It was adult Goku, his classic pose, clenched fists, looking brutal in his good old Muten Roshi kimono outfit. I took scissors, cut the drawing from the newspaper and brought it to my room. I drew it many times. And having not even read the article, I started calling Goku Manga, just like the title of the article. I thought the title was his name. Manga was his freaking name. Look mom, I drew manga again. I think the article was about the arrival of the manga books in North America, or like the big resurgence of it. It was the very beginning of this amazing culture slowly filling a section in our bookstores. Later on, a friend in my karate class showed me this book. It was Dragon Ball Volume 1, the first book. I flipped out! It's manga! You have it! Here's a fun fact. Goku's name in French was San Goku, in one word. It only made sense when I heard his full Japanese name, Son Goku, in 2 words. Son, pronounced in French, has a pretty awkward pronunciation as a name. It would be pronounced like Son Goku, which translates to his Goku. So I assume that's why they called him San Goku in the translation. So I immediately went to the bookstore with my mom and bought the book. I subscribed to the bookstore so that they would call me every month when the next chapter would come out. And every month, when we had the phone call, I would freak out. I would bug my parents to get a ride to the bookstore immediately. Then I would get the new chapter. I remember the smell of the pages, the fantastic cover art. I was cherishing these books like they were my most prized possessions. I would draw many of the action poses in the book, it just looked so perfect. When the saga was up to about 13 mangas, the animated series started playing in Canada. Thanks to me having access to the English channels once again, I had to wake up with an alarm clock at 6:50 AM on Saturday to go downstairs and watch my Dragon Ball episode. I would sing the intro and I was barely speaking English back then. I was probably sounding like Japanese people singing English songs in karaoke. I was recording the episodes on my VCR tapes. It was really fun to see the animated version of my favorite comic book. Eventually, I finished the Dragon Ball saga in manga form and I was somewhere in high school. I drew a lot in high school and I can say now that I started drawing because of Dragon Ball. It's the reason I'm here drawing this today and that I make a living with my art. Let's just not talk about the 10 years I spent pursuing music instead of drawing, but thankfully I eventually got back to full-time drawing. It's a good thing because drawing was my first creative passion as a kid, and it makes sense that I ended up choosing it over my other two passions, music and writing, which are now my secondary hobbies. It all started with Dragon Ball. What a great way to be introduced to manga and anime overall. I'm very thankful for that experience and for Akira Toriyama. Let's talk about Dragon Ball Z. I was really surprised to hear how many of my American friends were introduced to Dragon Ball Z way before being introduced to the earlier arc of the story with Kid Goku. It's strange that the Dragon Ball Z anime arc was so huge on TV in America, but few people seem to know that this is actually a pretty late chapter in the Dragon Ball story. Dragon Ball is a very continuous story that starts when Goku is just a little kid and eventually there's a time skip and Goku becomes a young adult, which marks the beginning of Dragon Ball Z in the anime. This Dragon Ball Z arc seemed to be promoted in American TV as its own standalone show. That's intriguing, so whenever I hear that I'm like, what? Start from the beginning, go read the manga! Kid Goku is the best! So what did I like the most about Dragon Ball? For me, I love the fantasy world that Akira created. It's very well written, full of details, and there is the same attention to detail in every drawing in the manga. It's unlike anything else. The art style is so iconic and really his own. My favorite parts were probably the training under Muten Roshi with Krillin and the martial art tournaments. They were always a blast to read and had good surprises. I love that Goku wasn't always winning his fights. He was prodigious, for sure, but not invincible, and he had to train really hard to get where he wanted. There's many 3-year time skips in the story where we know that the main characters were just furiously training the whole time in order to attain the martial art tournament. Overall, the first part of Dragon Ball was a beautiful story packed with adventures and martial arts with a strong kid that has a monkey tail and flies around on a magic cloud. Sounds kinda silly, but yeah, it's silly. Dragon Ball Z is when Goku becomes a young adult. I finally watched the anime version of it recently. I had only read the manga before. It was fantastic to rewatch the whole story from a different angle, and with voice acting. The first interesting thing that I noticed was Goku's Japanese voice. The people that watch the English dubs of Dragon Ball Z have a hard time adjusting to Goku's Japanese voice actress, but I understand what happened. The series started with Kid Goku, and most male kid characters in anime are voiced by women. So Goku was voiced by a woman called Masako Nozawa, and when Goku grew up, the producers decided to let her keep her role as Goku's voice. It only took me one episode in Dragon Ball Z to adapt to the older and muscular Goku having a bit of a feminine voice. It was easier for me to adapt to her voice since I had never watched the English dub. I can say now that I'm pretty attached to this voice actress, Masako Nozawa. I hope that she will be able to voice many more seasons of Dragon Ball Super. She's actually 83 at the time of this video. My favorite parts of Dragon Ball Z? The arrival of Vegeta, Gohan's training by Piccolo, and the Frieza battle on planet Namek. Everything after that was pretty chaotic and sometimes underwhelming, except the part with Vegeta against Buu and what happened because of it. Remember when Gohan went through a special training with an ancient sword of the gods for many episodes, only to get beaten by Buu in 10 seconds? Ugh. Yeah. But at least I got to see Goku and Vegeta fight together against Buu, and that was epic. Vegeta is my favorite character with Goku. The reason I'm not drawing him right now is that I want to save it for another episode. That's right, I really want to talk about Dragon Ball Super right now, but I think it deserves its own episode, and its own drawing. I wanted today's drawing to be a meaningful and iconic image of the early series. This is when Goku and Bulma meet for the first time. The first time that Goku sees a human being beside his late grandpa Gohan. Alright, I think this is a good place to stop this one. I'm just so happy that I made this episode. Dragon Ball means a lot to me and it influenced me so much to become an artist. I'm glad I was able to share with you this little story of how I was introduced to Dragon Ball as a kid. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.